What's up, you guys? This is Kurt Stubbs back with another episode of the Ohio High School Hoops Around the State podcast. Today we are fortunate to be joined by a key member of the 1987-1988 Cincinnati Woodward Bulldogs, the Division I state champions that year, Mr. DJ Boston. And correct me if I'm wrong, you were born Donald Jeffrey, is that right?
Oh, wow, yes.
Okay, all right.
Correct. Not too many people know that. I'm quite sure everybody knows now.
How's it going?
Good. It's going great here. Yes, it is.
DJ, what are you up to these days? I know you're living down in the Atlanta area.
Right now, I was actually coaching in the minor leagues, but this past year I took the year off basically to kind of follow my son around as he entered his senior year in high school. So, which has been a blast for me, just being gone for so long, just kind of take time out to, instead of helping someone else's kid, help your own. So, good to watch him blossom.
You kind of, if I wasn't looking at you, you kind of have a Harold Reynolds sound to you. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, wow.
Harold Reynolds back in his.
That must be the baseball thing.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with this. So the 1986-1987, we got kind of two stories going side by side here. You're at CAPE, which stands for Cincinnati Academy of Physical Education, which is no longer in existence. And you're playing in Class AA as a freshman and a sophomore with those guys. And then over on the other side of the story, you have Woodward in Class AAA, which would be the last season of the three-class system. And they're having a phenomenal season. You guys are having a really good season over at CAPE. And Woodward's season kind of ends in an abrupt halt. They get upset in a sectional final by Walnut Hills, who was, I think, like 17-5 at the time. Walnut Hills also beat Withrow, who was a powerhouse then as well. And the interesting thing was that season for Woodward ended. Chip Jones was suspended for that game and wasn't able to play. Chip's all-city guard, one of the best players to ever come out of Cincinnati, definitely one of the most talented.
Yes, for sure.
But, yeah, that season just, ended rather prematurely. I mean, I think Woodward had hopes of winning the state that year because I believe they had, like, Steve Givens was on that team. And correct me if I'm wrong, was like Lonnie Green on that team?
Lonnie, yes, Lonnie Green, yes, he was on that team as well.
So their season ends at 19-3. Now, on the other side of things, you are playing over at CAPE with, and a lot of my listeners will know this name, Ricardo Hill, who's the point guard on that team, now the head coach, doing an outstanding job at Walnut Hills. Just had a player win a NCAA championship at Maceo Teague over there at Baylor, so that was really cool. And you were over there, I believe, Jason Mitchell, Earl Green, Vinnie Clark, and you were playing for Coach Julian Holland over there at CAPE. And your season ended to Forest Park, 73-69. You finished 19-4. And I talked to Ricardo about this yesterday. He said he had never heard of Alex Davis prior to this game. And the sophomore, who eventually would go on to play at Ohio State, had 38 points, 11 rebounds. He was 15-28 shooting, 8-8 at the free throw line in this game. Ricardo had 18 and Earl Green 16. Now, you were out, correct, for the turn? You were hurt?
No. Where was that at? What year was that?
Your sophomore year, your last year at CAPE?
No, I think that my sophomore year, I think we were in the sectionals in Dayton. Is that where we lost to Forest Park at? That might have been my 9th grade year.
Yeah, sophomore year, it looks like you lost at Lakota High School in the sectional final to Forest Park, 73-69. Ricardo said that you might have been, because I said I didn't see his name in like the box scores in the tournament games.
I may have.
And he said that he thought you might have been out with an injury in the tournament that year.
Okay.
Because he said you would have definitely have made a big difference.
Made a big difference. That probably hopefully made up for that 4 points that we lost by.
Yeah.
But I may have been hurt. That's probably why I have a vague memory of that particular game. My last game that I actually remember was in Dayton. I missed the free throw. That might have been my freshman year, though, for some reason. Yeah. So, Alex Davis, well-known name to me, for sure. We played in a couple AAU tournaments. So
tell my listener, I mean, because a lot of the younger people that listen to this, I mean, I would doubt maybe they've heard of Cape, but kind of give people an idea of what, I mean, they were obviously a powerhouse in football with Carlos Snow and Vinnie Clark and those guys, but give people an idea of what Cape was.
Cape was it was basically like for very athletic guys, but actually people mistaken Cape as just being for just sports guys, but lo and behold, the academics were very, very hard there. They didn't take it lightly. I think we pretty much took some college courses, even though we took gym twice a day, but we still had the major courses, the math, science, but they were all advanced level classes. So I think that's the kind of perceived as, just a sports school. But, besides that, it was high in academics as well. You had some great athletes come out of there, like you had mentioned, Carlos Snow, Vinnie Clark. I can list the name, Ricardo Hill, but yeah, it was definitely a pretty good school.
So at the end of your sophomore year, what was the final decision? What led you to transfer over to Woodward?
Just closer to my district from where I lived. I lived over in North Avondale, over by Xavier.
Okay.
And just the ride and the inconvenience, not so much the school part, but just trying to put myself in a better situation and being closer on this side of town from where I was from and playing with some friends and some things like that. So it was a very difficult decision between Withrow and Woodward because I was right on the border, right there at on Dana. So it was either Withrow or Woodward. Crazy how we ended up making the decision of going to Woodward over Withrow.
Now you were were you in the same class with Carl Jones at Withrow?
Carl Brown?
Carl Brown, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Carl
yes,
Brown.
yes. He was a really, really good friend of mine. Yes, we both were in the same grade, yes.
And George Jackson was the head coach at Withrow at the time?
Jackson, yes, I still speak to him to this day. He's still a mentor of mine, so yes. It's crazy how I have some really good relationships with a lot of guys from Withrow after all these years. Okay. A lot of those guys, Bud Taylor, George Booker, Steve Gentry, Carl Brown, and like I said, Coach Jackson as well.
Now, your brother attended Woodward.
Yes, so that kind of made the conversation a little bit easier.
So those of you that I'm sure if you're familiar with the baseball, you know the name Darryl Boston. Was a 1981 Woodward graduate, and correct me if I'm wrong, he was taken first round, 7th overall. Was that out of high school?
Yes, I think it might have been six pick, either 6 or 7, 6th or 7th pick out of high school. Yeah, so yeah, out of Woodward High School as well.
To the Chicago White Sox, and then he would go on and have a pretty lengthy career. He played for the Sox, Toronto, the Mets, Colorado, and the Yankees. And
Yes.
his career ended on August 11th, and then it dawned on me that was the strike year.
Right here.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. Yeah. And actually, that was the time that I was on the cusp of possibly getting to the big leagues. And, we had some lengthy conversations about that strike that year. He was the guy that, was heavy on the player side, and I was a guy that was on the cusp of either or. I could either cross, and I think that I made the right decision by not crossing. Just doing some due diligence with talking to him as well.
So, your brother, he retired at 31. Was there? I mean, now that would be really young. Then, I mean, a little different times, but. Was there any particular reason that he, called it a day in 1994?
He went on to play a couple of years after that. He signed with the Marlins and played a couple years, a year in the minor leagues. Then he ended up playing independent ball for maybe a year or so, and ended up got into coaching the following year. It may have been 97, 98, and.
Okay.
He just kind of rode that wave, and he's still coaching with the Chicago White Sox to this day. So, good move for him.
Now, you were drafted twice.
Yes.
You were drafted out of high school by the Mariners, and then you were drafted by the Blue Jays out of San Jacinto there in 1990. Now, you were in the minors, kind of bouncing around from like 91 to maybe 06, somewhere around then.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that. I mean,
wow.
you were in the minors when, I mean, it's nothing compared to how they're treated in the show, but kind of talk to me about, what life was like on the road in the minors.
The hotels were, minor league. I don't want to bash any hotels, but it was tough. It was tough. The hot days, the soup. We had soup and peanut butter and jelly, and was expected to perform at a high level. Below minimum wage. It was definitely, you really had to work your tail off to achieve your goal. But just the long bus rides, the different coaching staffs, the about getting called up, getting sent down, just kind of being on the go, pretty much living out of a hotel for pretty much a full year, 10 out of 12 months, along with going to what they call extended spring training. So it was tough. It was definitely tough, but it was a learning experience, made you stronger. And then as I got older, I kind of bounced around the independent league and kind of played overseas a little bit, played in Mexico, went to Hawaii. But it allowed me to travel the world. So basically, I have no complaints. I guess if I could do it all over again, probably would say go to school and try this at basketball. But like I did at San Jacinto, play both. Because I still run into guys and say, man, you should play basketball. You should play basketball. But then again, I just kind of went with my first love, and baseball was my first love. I kind of played basketball just to get under the scope of being the younger brother of Darryl Boston, the baseball player.
Yeah. And
I just kind of excelled at playing basketball as I grew 6 inches over the summer, actually, going into Cape. And so that's just kind of how I shoot down. But the minor leagues is just exactly what it's called, the minor league. But I'm glad that they're fighting for different rights now and different, better pay. And with the 5 rounds right now, it's kind of a good thing too.
Who, just out of curiosity, who was the most talented guy you ever played the minors with?
Played with or against?
With or against.
The most talented guy had to be Derek Jeter. And we played against each other for possibly from his first year through 95, 96. So I think he got drafted in 90. I think it might have been 90. So we played against each other for at least 6 years because the Yankees played the Blue Jays almost every 3 days in Tampa. So
Yeah.
it was just a 20, 30-minute ride. But Derek Jeter for sure. But I played with some great players, Carlos Delgado, Alex Gonzalez, Ruben Rivera, that's one name. Played against Andrew Jones. I mean, that's just some of the names that, I can speak of that the fans would know.
Yeah, I mean, and that had to be cool, when you're in high school and your older brother is, is in Major League Baseball at the time. I mean, that had to be pretty cool.
Yes, it was, especially at Cape. I used to come back with big bags of red shoes for Carlos Snow and Vinnie Clark. Those guys were probably the best dressed football players ever with the AstroTurfs, because those turfs were pretty hard to get. And, we all wore the same size. And like I said, it was accessible, and just being able to be in the locker room with the guys and things like that at the major league level to actually see how it is to be a professional.
Yeah, so you juggled playing baseball and basketball at the same time in high school. It's a little bit different now. It's really hard, especially at a high level, for guys to be good at multiple things. I mean, people still do it, but what was it like in those days? Were you just playing basketball? Was it pick up, outside of season, or what was the layout like?
After I had signed to play baseball?
Well, when you're coming up through in high school, because you had played early baseball as well. Once baseball season started, then, what happened to basketball after baseball season would start?
It's kind of crazy because basketball still had priority over the baseball, because in high school I really didn't take it as serious. That's probably why I got drafted twice.
Yeah.
They knew I had a gift to play baseball, but basketball at that time was my thing. So I kind of excelled at that. So the baseball thing kind of took a back seat, and just like I said, baseball was just the first love. It just kind of came natural, and I ended up playing with Midland for 2 years. So that was kind of a good thing, which they allowed me just to kind of, when they had to travel with some basketball, they would allow me to go. So they made it convenient for me. So it wasn't very difficult at that time. So kind of worked out.
Yeah, definitely worked out for you. You've gotten to see a lot of things through the game of baseball, but basketball in high school, especially in Cincinnati.
Yes.
But really in Cincinnati, around that time in the early 80s, mid 80s, baseball, guys, it was red hot. I mean, with guys that were coming out of, the area down there. Moeller, yeah.
Moeller, you had the Larkins, you had Griffey. There was a lot of guys, Tuffy Rose. There were a lot of baseball guys that came out that were really, really talented.
Yeah, some things haven't changed. Moeller's still rolling.
Moeller's still Moeller. I still hear about Moeller. Everybody said, yeah, where you from? I say, I'm from Cincinnati. They say, where'd you go to school, Moeller? No, I did not go to Moeller. But I hear they're really good in basketball right now. I hear they're really, really good.
Yeah, they are. And I'm going to ask you a question here a little bit in comparison here. So we move into the 1987-88 season. You're now, over at Woodward, and I found this funny. I was reading in the Inquirer, Cincinnati Inquirer, and gentleman that covered a lot of your games was a guy named Orlando Ledbetter. Yeah, it's so very thankful for the work he did back then, and the papers covered so much stuff, and it was so detailed back then. Your coach at Woodward, Larry Miller, he was talking about the preseason rankings that they do in the Inquirer, and he said, "I don't understand why we were rated first. We only have one starter back and another part-time starter." He said, I think there's a number of strong teams," said Miller, in assessing the area. "I personally voted Withrow number one."
Well, that's just Coach Miller for you right there, the reverse psychology.
Yeah, I just found that funny heading into the season. I know, Withrow is a team that, you guys were quite familiar with. So 1988, Dayton Dunbar actually wins the AP poll title that year. You guys finished 6th. You were 18-2 in the regular season, averaging about 80.5 points a game. Coach Larry Miller, that was your head coach. What was Coach Miller like as a head coach? What was it like to play for him?
It was amazing. He pulled the best out of all of the kids. As you know, that team right there, we were strong 1 through 12 guys. We had 11 out of the 12 guys that could have probably started at any public high school in the area. He just knew how to motivate us, just like you just mentioned before, how he would say little things to get under our skin, but find ways to motivate us and push us. One story I always tell is he found a way to make our practices harder than the games, because it allowed us to push each other. The bench was just as tall, just as big, just as strong. So it made it, every game was win or lose, you run. Most guys don't want to run, so he made it competitive, but he also taught us well how to be gentlemen, how to be men. But also he was a father figure, and actually to this day we still talk. He comes to see me every once in a while, so he's been a blessing for me, but he was really a great coach as much as a mentor as well.
And you guys, had a pressing style, up tempo type game. I'm sure that was because not all teams back in that era were playing like that for sure. And another thing is, at this point in time, you're in a conference, a metro county conference, and you're talking about yourself, Mount Healthy, Oak Hills, Colerain, Aiken, and Western Hills. So it's a little different then than it is now. Oak Hills has moved over to the GMC, and so is Colerain. But it's kind of different now because Cincinnati has been kind of dominated by the parochial schools of late. But back then, the City League schools were every bit or better in most occasions than the parochial schools.
Yeah. So that's kind of funny that I say whatever happened to the public high school games, playing against each other, and all of those games were like rivalries because we all knew each other, and which made it very difficult because it seemed like everybody was just as talented, but we just found ways because we can go a little bit deeper and had a little different style that can outlast everybody else during that time. But it was definitely strong that PHSL was. But also give credit to Oak Hills, Colerain, Elder. When we played those guys, they gave us a different look, as opposed to the public schools. So give credit to those guys as well too.
I got a question. Can you explain to me what the Bulldog Stomp was?
That was something that Chip Jones came up with. I don't know where that came from, but it just kind of carried over throughout the playoffs, and we just kind of added it to our mantra of intimidation or something like that, that we were coming. So that come probably from Chip Jones. Chip Jones was kind of the leader of all that stuff.
I love it.
And Orlando Berry. And Orlando Berry. Don't forget Orlando Berry.
I can't forget Orlando Berry. I got to know Orlando pretty well when his son was in high school at Taft. You know, his son was able to win a state championship as well there. Funny guy.
Yeah, great guy.
So you guys start the season 4-0, and then you guys head out to Las Vegas for the Prep Classic, if you remember that. And
yes, I do.
So, side note here, the guy I'm about to mention is the reason I became an Arkansas basketball fan.
Oh, don't tell me, Todd Day.
Yeah. So I'm going.
That name still ring bell in my ear.
Yeah, I'm going through the thing, and I'm like, I was like, well, they got beat by this Hamilton High School out of Memphis, Tennessee. I was like, I wonder who they had. And when I looked, I saw Todd Day hit you guys for 29, and I was like, and they finished 24th in the country that year, so that was a really good team.
Yeah.
But yeah, I absolutely loved Todd Day, Lee Mayberry, Oliver Miller, those guys when they were at Arkansas. And but you had a great game as well. You had 25. Chip Jones had 23. Dennis Falls had 12. So you get beat 85-74. So it wasn't like, you guys got run out of the gym or anything like that. Do you remember anything about that game?
Yeah, I think we wasn't at full staff. I mean, we didn't have our full roster. Melvin Bostic was ill. I think that could have been a big help, especially in the middle. So, yeah, that's one of those games where we kind of got surprised, like, okay, this is really what it's like, outside the city. And, it challenged us, and it made it better, too. So, yeah, that was a really good game. I think it was close to the end.
Yeah.
Just kind of made a run at the end and kind of got away from us a little bit.
Do you remember much about Todd Day when you guys played?
Silky smooth.
Yeah.
That's why I said that name still ring bells in my ear. Just wow. Because you don't see tall guys that can handle the ball like he was, and being able to shoot from deep range and penetrate and do all those things, which is now a common thing.
Oh, yeah.
6'7", 6'8", like for me, I was 6'7", 6'8", and playing down low. We were tall then. But then you see a guy like that was slim, silky smooth, and can shoot. And it was impressive, very impressive.
Yeah, in the late 80s, there weren't a lot of guys that were his size doing that. So you guys, after you come, you finish up out there, you're on a 13-game winning streak. And then it's just a head scratcher. Game 19, you lose to Purcell Marion.
Oh.
And let me read some of this to you, see if any of this rings a bell. So Purcell Marion is 8-11. They had just upset LaSalle, so they obviously are playing pretty good basketball at the time. You led this game by 17 points in the third quarter. Purcell had a couple of guys, P.J. Mays, who I think went to Missouri maybe, Greg Allen, and they were coached by Jim Stahl. But the hero of this game was a guy named George Fisher. They would outscore you 27-9 in the fourth. George Fisher had 5 points in the last 4 seconds of the game. He hits a three. You guys get called for a 5-second violation on the inbound, and then he buries a 17-footer to win the game, 56-54. And the funny thing about this George Fisher character, this guy was cut from the team the previous year and was playing CYO ball. And he beats the state champs with 5 points in 4 seconds. Now, you guys were number 4 at the time, and I'm going to guess that you and Chip didn't. You had 2 points and Chip had 1. I'm guessing that Coach maybe didn't.
I had 2 points. No, I didn't have 2 points.
I don't know. That's what it said in the box score. Maybe it was incorrect, but it said in the article that you and Chip, Coach Miller sat you quite a bit in this game.
I don't recall that because to be honest with you, we really won that game. that 5-second violation. I made the shot. They called a 5-second violation. You know what is hostile is like going into Purcell Marion playing, and I still mess with PJ still messes with me about that game. But that happens. I think it was the best thing for us. I think we may have just kind of overlooked those guys, and and really that was the turning point for us to really sit back and say we are beatable if we play like that. And I think Coach Miller used that as a weapon the next practice and just lit into us. But that was one of those games that was a good game for us, a really good game that they beat us up. They pounded us. They had some football guys that were grabbing, tugging, all of that. But at the end of the day, we lost, but it also made us better. And as crazy as that sounds, but that was one of those things where we needed that, because we were all on a high horse. We were all, hey, we number one, blah, blah, blah. And it just kind of brought us back to earth and said, hey, it's go time now. So I'm glad that happened, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you just answered what I was going to ask you. I mean, that's got to be a big, kind of reframing your mind heading into the tournament, because you beat up Western Hills to end the season. You finished 10-0 in conference play, which is pretty impressive. With Oak Hills was really good, who you would see a little bit later. So then you get into the tournament. You play Milford, who Coach Miller said had a really good game plan against you, and you end up beating them 59-43. But it was only the second time all year where you were held under 60 points. You had 25 points in this game to move on, and then you would play Aiken, which you beat 91-63. Melvin Bostic had 23, Chip Jones 19, and then you beat Hughes 78-46. Chip had 18, and Orlando Berry had 17 in that game. Now the districts get a little bit tougher though. You would get Trotwood Madison, and the games moved to UD Arena at this point. But Chip was phenomenal in this game. 32 points, 4 threes, 11 of 14 shooting. You had 9. Now, there seems like, I'm going to let you talk to me about this. It seems like there's a kind of a trend here. You were up 40-26 with 3:07 to play in the third. And then you had to rally. You were down 51-50 with 3:06 to play. And then Chip finished the game with 4 free throws and 2 baskets. It seemed like you guys would get these big leads, and then, what happened when you'd get these big leads? Was it like you let off the gas, or?
Well, yeah, it's just kind of you let off the gas and you kind of think you can just kind of cruise to a win that the team is going to give up. But that's what made those games special, because they weren't going to give up. And we just thought that we can cruise, we get up, they're going to give up. And, but they fought and made us turn it back on again. Like, hey, about time you look up, the score is 50-51. And you're in a real battle with the same amount of time that with 3 minutes left. So that's just kind of a learning experience. And, it's just kind of letting off the gas when, you keep your foot on the pedal and you just kind of don't let them up.
So the regionals, after you beat Trotwood 62-53, you'll go to the regionals, which I believe were played at UD as well. You'd get a familiar foe, Oak Hills. Now, did you play Oak Hills 2 times in the regular season because they were in your conference?
Yes.
Okay, so they obviously were very familiar with you, coached by Sonny Tudor, and they had a player, and I think I got this name right, Rob Hauk?
Yes. Yes.
So he hits a 35-footer to beat Fairmont in the district final, 59-57. He had 26 points in that game just to get to play you guys. And it looks like, you guys led most of this game. I mean, it ends 53-49, but it looked like you were in control. Chip had 23 points, another outstanding shooting night, 9 of 12 from the floor, 5 threes. Orlando had 10, you had 9. Rob Hauk had 21 points, but it looked like from reading about this game that assistant coach Jimmy Leon kept telling Larry to put Katera Relaford on Rob, and he did, and it seemed like he made it really tough for him in the second half of that game.
Yeah, well, yeah, Katara's tall, long arms, very good defender. Very good defender. So that kind of slowed him down a little bit with him. Katara being 6'7", long arms, just kind of made some shots difficult for him. So when you have the versatility that we had like that on our team, it makes it difficult for other teams that we can kind of box somebody in a little bit at that time. So we had some, like Orlando Berry, if there was a guard situation, we would put Orlando Berry. But Qatar Relaford was our defensive guy. He was our stopper. He always guarded the top player. It was a great call by Coach Lynn.
If a fight breaks out in practice, who was the toughest guy on that team, on your team?
At that time?
Yeah.
Melvin Bostic.
Melvin Bostic?
Yeah. Yeah. I would go with Big Mel. Big Mel had a demeanor about him of no nonsense, no play, straight business. He was trying to block every shot in practice. He didn't care who he was. He'd knock you to the ground. But that's what we needed. We needed a guy like that. We needed a tough interior guy like Big Mel who can kind of control the paint. And teams knew that when you come to the paint, you had to kind of alter your shot because we did have front line of 6'6", 6'5", and like I said, that's why I say that game in Las Vegas against Todd Day, I think that probably would have made a difference because it could have altered some of Todd Day's shots getting to the paint, which he did quite a bit, or helped on the offensive boards as well.
So if he was the toughest, who talked the most?
Coach Bettis. In practice.
Yeah.
But no, I would probably say Dennis Falls.
Dennis Falls?
Dennis Falls, yes. Yeah. Dennis Falls. Dennis Falls was probably Dennis. Yeah, probably Dennis and Orlando. Dennis and Orlando Berry. Yeah. But the probably quietest guy had to be Kevin Andrews, but he was our general. Yeah. He was our leader. He put us in position to be successful, and the good thing about me and Chip that if Chip was hot, he called Chip's play. And if he knew the mismatch was with me, he called me. So he was our balance to our team at the end of the day. He was the floor general of that group.
What made Chip special? I never saw him play live, but what made him special?
His athleticism. He was like poetry in motion. I never found myself being able to say that, but he was like poetry in motion. He would dunk on you. He could shoot from deep range. He could penetrate. He was under control. He had all the ability to do, from inside to out, from his mid-range game to out and take you off the dribble, pull up. He had a complete package. He was definitely the complete package back then. Definitely.
When you talk about, players in the mid to late 80s and you're in a conversation with some old heads, is his name coming up? For sure. Yes. That's one guy. I don't know if I ever said this publicly, but that's one guy I wish that had all the ability I wish would have made it. I mean, I think we all kind of looked up to him. He still is a legend.
Yeah, he was that dude. He was that dude. He was good on both ends of the court. He was a complete player. When you look at a complete player, back then, that was him. He was the poster child for a complete player. So kudos to Chip Jones.
Yeah, because a lot of times, it's 2021. We're 30 plus years removed from that, and a lot of times people are prisoner of the moment and forget about just how good some of those guys were back in your era. And I hope, part of the reason I do this is I don't want people to forget.
Thank you.
A lot of these kids in their, early 20s, mid 20s, early 30s, even some of these kids that are playing now, I want them to know who guys like, DJ Boston were and Chip Jones, because you guys paved the way for these guys.
Appreciate that.
It's been, other than, Taft winning that state championship in 2011, which was not Division One.
Thank you. Say that again, please.
Yeah, that was not Division One.
Congratulations, Taft, though. Congratulations.
Yeah.
But I still mess with DeMarco Bradley about that. Like, hey, that Division One is a little bit different. That was a different beast.
Yes. Yeah. So, your team still has to be talked about among the greats. And so you beat Oak Hills and then you beat Fairfield 74-68, nearly 4,000 on hand at UD Arena. Chip Jones with 23, you had 18 and 11, and Relaford had 16. Todd Holstein led Fairfield with 23 points, 13 rebounds, and 6 assists. Again, this is another game you led by 41-26, and they cut the lead to 3, 57-54, but you end up, figuring out a way to hold on for 74-68 victory, and you're moving on to the Mecca in Ohio, St. John Arena.
Yes.
What was that feeling like winning that Fairfield game and knowing, like, I'm sure going to Columbus, it would be a big deal now, but, people didn't travel the way they do now then. So going to Columbus, I'm sure, was a big, big deal.
Yeah, well, the thing is, back then we had a good traveling team, high school following. So, but going to Columbus, you like, well, I wonder if some of the fans will show up. But it was surprising that a lot of fans showed up, and that's the goal, to get to the state finals, the Final Four, and I think we were all excited. That we knew it was close enough that we could possibly win it. So it was exciting, just getting to the Final Four, playing in Columbus, because there's not too many schools in Cincinnati that get a chance to play at Ohio State. Most of the teams played at Dayton. Mm-hmm. So the makeup going to Columbus is like a big deal. So we were excited, ecstatic, and looking forward to it.
So prior to going, to the state tournament, I know a lot of times people that live in the Cincinnati area are not Buckeye fans. I know several people that are, UD, Cincinnati, Xavier.
Yep.
Who did you root for growing up?
Xavier. I was a big Xavier because I live right around the corner. Those police officers ran us out of the gym, out of the field house so many times. It was horrendous. But I knew a lot of the guys from Xavier. Jamal from Xavier. A lot of those guys, Tyrone Hill. I was just familiar with a lot of the guys from there because it was right around the corner. So Xavier, I was a big Xavier guy.
So you guys show up St. John Arena and you're playing Parma Valley Forge. And you didn't waste any time letting them know that who you were. It's 27-13 after the first quarter. You guys end up winning this game 77-56. I'm sure it could have been worse. you led the way with 24. Chip had 16, and Orlando Berry had 14. Was there any nerves heading into this game, or was it just like, hey, let's go, let's go take care of these guys?
Well, like I said, when I said earlier, like our practices were so hard during the week that we couldn't look forward. We looked forward to playing against somebody else to possibly beat up on those. And that's probably what it was. Like a lot of times we were so eager to play someone different that you jump out to those leads like that and then you think you can coast. And, and then they found out a game plan to attack us. And then we found ways to win. But like I said, I think it was just more Coach Miller preparing us for that situation in practice. So once you get there, we wasn't going to turn around. We wasn't going to let nothing hold us back. I think we were all focused. We were all geared, knew what was close, and we weren't going to let up this time.
So, you show up out on the floor, and there's nearly 11,000 people at this game. But I'm guessing that your style of play doesn't allow for you to be nervous too long because everything's so frantic.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that was like a eye opener when you see that many people. The way St. John Arena sits, it can get awful noisy in there.
Yeah, like I said, I think the nerves were when you come out of the locker room. And you look up and like, wow, look at all these people here.
Yeah.
And then but once the tip goes up, we go back to what we know. And like I said, the tenacious defense with Orlando and Kevin up front and Qatar and Big Mel on the wings, and I was back. And it was just one of those situations where once the ball was up, all the nerves were gone and just kind of let our ability take over. And that was one of those situations where we didn't look back. We wanted to jump off early.
So you take care of these guys, and now you're going to play for the state championship game. And, looking at heading into the state championship game, one thing I found interesting and hasn't changed a whole lot. You guys didn't have anybody on the first three teams, first three All-Ohio teams. You were honorable mention, and Chip Jones was special mention, but didn't have anybody on the first three teams. And those individual accolades are fine, but I know you guys would rather have the state championship. But it's still, it's kind of strange that you guys didn't have anybody. I mean, Chip Jones to me is, if he's not a first three teamer, there's something wrong.
Right, for sure. But I think back then we didn't pay too much attention to that until the end of the year, or it was brought to our attention, I think. I think, like you said, Orlando Ledbetter did a great job. We didn't know, or at least I didn't really pay much attention to it until the end of the year. But back in the day, it used to be every Sunday, who was the leading scorer, rebounds and all that. We would look at that, but not so much the whole honorable mention state. We didn't know any of that stuff until the end. And I think we played for each other, not for, those individual accolades. So I think that's what made us special at that time. So nowadays, everybody's on their social media and looking to see where they're ranked at. But for back then, it was just more about team and effort.
Well, the championship game, you would play Steve Dickerson's Columbus Linden McKinley squad, and you destruction like the state had never seen before. I mean, you come out of the gates and score 34 points in the first quarter. In a high school game with an 8-minute quarter, it's 34-13 after one. You scored 29 in the third and 32 in the fourth. Final score 107-70. You didn't leave.
It could have been worse.
Yeah, no doubt. There was no doubt being left here by the Woodward Bulldogs. You had 27 points. Chip had 24. Orlando had 17. Troy Long had 9. John Smith 8. Bostic with 5. Their second team All Ohio and Lewis Jeter ended up with 20. But boy,
he was no way near Chip Jones.
This was a beatdown.
Mm-hmm. But just playing in the public high school system and coming up, the tough games that we had, like I said, it just prepared us for that moment. Like, here it is, guys. But Coach Miller, Coach Leon, Coach Bettis, that whole staff did an amazing job to prepare us for all of these games. So with that being so close and possibly being one of the first teams, Cincinnati Public Schools, to win the state, we did hear that. And there was no way they were going to take that from us. No way, no way. I mean, we came out with energy. We were ready. There was no holding back. There was no holding back. So, like I said, you come out, you look up, and you see all of our fans. The Rupp Arena full of people. So it was just amazing.
Now, as a player, you get into a game like this, it's 30. At what point of that, I'm assuming it was in the first quarter, did you think there's no way these guys can beat us?
I think we seen fear in their eyes at the tip. Because if you go back and look at the video, we just had a different motor that day for some odd reason. I mean, just being in that situation, I think it was just we sensed we seen blood, and we just was like, there's no way, just like a shark, just like it's here for us, and we weren't gonna let up. I mean, I've never seen the defense play like that for 3 quarters. Like, we weren't gonna let those games where, those big leads like that come back to haunt us and not even give them a chance to believe that they can even beat us or need to even be in the same gym with us at that time. So I think once we got to Columbus, that was the mindset of like, we're that team that you need to be paying attention to.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how things came full circle, because there were so many games along the line where you had these big leads and kind of let them slip away. And that certainly did not happen when you got to Columbus. But I think it also says that Cincinnati basketball was pretty doggone good at that time.
Yes.
Because
so like I said, that prepared us for it. Those games, those teams, the Oak Hills, the Elders, the Purcell game, the Withrow games, the Hughes games, the West High games, all those games prepared us for that situation, whether we blew teams out or barely beat them, but somehow, some way, they prepared us for it. So there was no way that we were going to get that far and allow us to let up, knowing that for some of those guys, it was their last high school game. And when you get to that point, like, this is my last high school game. And I don't think Chip, Swook, Kevin, any of those seniors, Troy Long, that's a name that let me go back. Let me say Troy Long was probably the most talkative guy in practice. Troy Long. But none of those guys were going to let their last game be a downer. They wanted to go out with a bang, and those guys led the way and set the stage for that rally. So it was great.
So you went the first state championship won by Woodward since 1921, when the baseball team won the state. Quite an accomplishment. So what was it like coming back to the city as Division I state champs? The first year that the four division system in Ohio, you're the state champs.
It was a whirlwind. It was just like any team winning the national championship, the World Series, the NBA championship. It was like down to City Hall and all of that. So it was amazing. It was just like, it was well worth it, you know, and it was a warm welcome from the city. It was great. It was absolutely great. I still live vicariously through some of those days, but it was a great feeling to come back as a champion.
Yeah, you know, and you mentioned some of those one of those seniors was Chip Jones. And he, I want to say, was signed to play at Tennessee. And he ends up going to Hiawassee Junior College down in Tennessee. And then you and Chip would reunite.
Link up again.
You would reunite again.
Reunite, right.
Yeah. So I want to finish just briefly, you know, touch on that, your senior season at Woodward, because there were some great things that happened that year as well. But, you know, Chip goes off down to Tennessee to the junior college. And then, like I said, you guys meet up out in Houston. But, you know, Chip ends up with Coach Miller at Dayton. And he's a killer at Dayton. You know, what happened to Chip? What's his whereabouts now?
Well, I know that he's in the city of Cincinnati.
Okay.
We still talk periodically. There's a group chat that a couple of the guys from the team, you know, we just kind of reach out to each other, touch base. But I do know he's in Cincinnati. He's doing well.
Good.
But yeah, Chip is, you know, he was a wild card. But like I said, he was one of those guys you wanted to see make it. You know, like I said, that was something that I've held in for a long time. But he was that guy. He was that guy. And, you know, it's shameful for the way things happen. But, you know, he's in a better place now, and I'm happy for him.
Yeah, if you're listening and you get a chance, you know, kind of if you look up Chip Jones, he didn't have the easiest of upbringings, and for him to just, you know, be able to overcome it and play as much as he did, there's not a lot of people that would be able to overcome some of the stuff that he did in his childhood. But if you ever get a chance, there's some pretty good articles about him from back in that era. So.
Okay, I definitely will.
Yeah,
but that's why he was a folk hero.
Yeah.
I kind of say that laughing, but he, like I said, he's a legend. He in Cincinnati, you know, that's one of those guys that it was long overdue for his jersey not to be hung up in Woodward's gym, you know, and that was one of my things. I said, hey, his jersey needs to be hung up in this gym somewhere. He was kind of the start of, I mean, there were some other guys ahead, but you say Chip Jones, everybody know who Chip Jones was. Like playing in Dayton, they ragged him so bad. I felt bad for him against Oak Hills. I still remember it. Like, but he was special. He was special.
Does anybody call him Ramondo?
That's about somebody calling me Donald too. You know, it's very seldom people know what his real name is. You obviously had to know who he was.
Yeah.
You know, as a kid coming up, and but I don't think nobody knows his real name either.
Yeah.
Armando Chip Jones. Yeah.
Yeah, young guys, do your research, do your homework, look him up.
Right.
It's well worth your time. So your senior year comes about, pretty good season. You finished 9th in the AP poll, 16-4. Your second team All-Ohio, Orlando Berry's honorable mention All-Ohio. You finished 22-5. Some cool things that happened. You lose the city championship to Withrow, but then you return the favor in the regional final and beat them 63-53 after you'd beaten Middletown. And you advance back to the state tournament. And this time, there was a pretty good player waiting on you.
Yeah. Yeah, he still drags me to this day, but he also know we should have won that game as well too. Jim Jackson. We still actually I just spoke to him a couple days ago here in Atlanta. But he's another guy, that was silky smooth, but he had the physique of a grown man, and
Yeah.
he was, and he got a couple more calls at Ohio State, knowing that he was going there. So that's what I told him. I said, "That's how y'all got us, man. They tricked us.
Yeah.
We were playing at UD or somewhere. It was a little bit more even ground. But no, they had a great team as well, and it was just a situation where we just couldn't get over the hump, and they made some adjustments at half, and we tried to take away one thing, and they beat us with another thing. So that's just the way it goes sometimes. But it was a well played game on both ends.
Yeah, you talk about winning this game. Final score is 57-50. You played in front of 12,889. You guys led this game heading into the fourth, 44-41. And then it's 49-48, and they applied a half-court press to slow you down. And you went.
I went out in the third quarter. They called a charge, and I hurt my wrist, and I was out for maybe 4 minutes at third quarter or whatever it was. Right at that time, it was 49-47 or whatever that situation was. But I don't know. They found a way.
Yeah, because you guys when you went to the bench with the wrist, 7 straight possessions without scoring, and you were having a great night. You ended up with 25 points and 9 rebounds in this game. But, Jimmy Jackson ended up with 29 points, 7 rebounds. He was Mr. Basketball that year as well. And Donnie Dobbs had 12 points and 9 rebounds.
That's who killed us that second half. Yeah, we were going to give him that shot until he made it, and by the time we realized that he was making it, it was too late in that fourth quarter, and they had already got off to that little bit of lead at that time.
But nonetheless, Toledo Macomber goes on to win the state championship in their next game. A great season, 5 losses. You lost to Miami Senior, Oak Hills, Withrow, Ballard out of Kentucky, and then the state
Allen Houston.
Yeah.
All those guys, those teams that we lost to on the road, they had some talent. And, you get that. When you go to these tournaments like that, you never know what you're going to get. And Allen Houston played well. What's the guy from Miami Senior? Went to Florida State. Doug Edwards.
Doug Edwards.
Played well.
Yeah.
Doug Edwards. So, like I said, Carl Brown played well. But like I said, I still tell those guys, hey, I'll change that. Yeah, you can have that city's championship, but we beat y'all when it really mattered most to not allow y'all to go to the state.
Yeah.
So we still have that over those guys at Withrow. That's what I tell Steve Gentry and Doc Gamble and Bud Taylor, all those guys. We still have a blast about that. I send those guys that clip in the newspaper and say, hey, y'all remember this just in case you guys forget. And it's almost 40 years later. I still send those guys that clip and they say, man, don't start.
Yeah.
We still won. Steve Gentry was hurt. I said, oh, I don't want to hear that.
Well, Steve Gentry, some years later would finally get his state title coaching over at Deer Park with his son playing. But 22-5, another great season. Your career at Woodward comes to a close. Now you signed with Wichita State.
Yes.
And I'm gonna guess, was that strictly to play baseball?
That was to play both.
Oh, okay, to play both. Okay.
At that time, I was looking at schools to play both. Arizona State was one of the schools. And it's kind of crazy that Jimmy Jackson, even during the game, would say, hey, man, come to Ohio State with me. So,
Yeah.
I mean, me and Jimmy were close, throughout our high school career. So, but yeah, Wichita State was a very good situation for me. For me to go in and play right away, possibly play right away, and also be able to play baseball as well. And just things didn't work out at Wichita State. Ended up at San Jacinto with
Yeah,
Chip.
yeah. So you end up with Chip, and Chip, doing what he does. They're 29-4 at the school he was at in Tennessee. He led the team in scoring, but then you guys hook up there, and he would go off to Dayton after that, and would go off to start your journey.
Yeah.
What was it like out at San Jacinto in Houston with Chip? Was it like moving the show west?
Can I please no comment? No, bro, Chip was great. Chip was, like I said, he was a wild card.
Yeah.
Chip was Chip, and like you said, I don't want to speak for him, but he was, a wild card. Let's just say that, and but he was able to still be able to do what he was able to do when the ball rolled out on the court.
Yeah.
So like I said, so yeah, you can basically say just move down south, a little further down south, but he was still able to do what he was able to do, and we wasn't really guys that kind of hung out at San Jacinto. He was, like a big brother to me down there,
Mm-hmm.
and, with being from home and, being able to look over one another and that type of deal. So he hung with the older guys and I hung with the younger guys. Me and Sam Cassell and a couple of the younger group of guys that were the freshmen coming in. So
Now, Sam Cassell liked to talk.
Yes, still does.
Still does, yeah.
Still does. But he was special as well. Those guys at practice were a different breed. Like you knew guys that had the determination to continue their careers to move forward. And Chip was one of those guys, and I guess Chip just got caught up in the wrong crowd, wrong group or whatever, and wasn't able to let the past go, So, but I'm happy for him now. Very happy for him. Very happy.
Any documentary people out there that are listening, he would be a great guy to do a documentary on for sure.
For sure.
Sounds like it'd be a very well viewed documentary. Yeah. But so I want to end with this. You played against Jimmy Jackson in high school, and there's like three groups of people that I talk to throughout the state, whether they're young, old, or middle age, whatever. And you have your LeBron James, fan club of best Ohio high school player. You have your older generation, which swears by Jerry Lucas. And then I've run into a certain group of people that will swear by Jimmy Jackson. Who was he the best player that you played against as far as basketball goes? You've played against a lot of great players when you have to think about this question.
He's up there. He's for sure up there. I mean, there were some special guys that like I said, the Todd days, Jimmy, yeah. But also Chip Jones too.
Yeah.
I keep finding myself going back to Chip Jones after having this conversation, just kind of reliving some of those memories and how good he was. But Jimmy was different. His body was built like a man. He was strong. He was smart, very smart. He was, like you said, that big point guard at high school.
Yeah.
You know, he was tough to guard at high school. So I would probably say Jimmy. I would go with Jimmy Jackson. I would definitely go with Jimmy Jackson right now. Just thinking, because I've never been asked that question through that era. It'll probably be Jimmy Jackson, but I'd also throw Chip up there as well. You know, so kudos to those guys.
Who was the toughest pitcher you faced? A guy, when you saw him on the mound, you were like, oh, jeez.
Rob Dibble.
Well, one, yeah, he's a maniac.
Hey, but this, you know, this was like coming up through the minor league. He was down on a rehab assignment, and you know, he was known for all his saves and his antics and all that, but also throwing the ball at 99 miles an hour and not really knowing where it's going.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, getting through all the hiding the ball and all of that, he was probably one of the most difficult guys, I would say.
Well, DJ, I'm not gonna call you Donald. I'll call you DJ. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I appreciate you coming on today. I wish your son nothing but the best. He's going to be a senior this year, and you get to do the dad thing before he graduates. So that's awesome. But man, I just love talking to people from your era. You know, even though you associate with Ricardo, I'll let that slide. But I do. I appreciate you coming on, man. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you. One thing, you know, my son don't believe how talented. You know, it's crazy that, like you said, the younger generation. I try and tell him and talk to him a little bit about the past, and say, hey, man, I go home and bring back plaques. He say, oh, Dad, you didn't do that. But son, I hope you listening to this. But no, thanks again, man, for having me on, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Hello, Cincinnatians.
To your son, your dad was a stud. It's true. It's not just hearsay. So.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you for that. Because he said, you must have told him to say that. I said, no, Jay. But, you know, as dad, I'm just dad. So yeah. I like the idea of me being dad right now and just following him. You know, hoping he can, you know, create his own journey. That's, you know, I was happy that, you know, he's taking it serious. So appreciate you guys.
Yeah, thank you for coming on, man. I appreciate it, and we'll be in touch.
Oh, for sure. Appreciate you. Thanks.
Thanks, DJ.
All right. See you later.